The bustling halls of Galaxis Prime University were a cacophony of sounds and scents, a sensory overload that would have overwhelmed most unadapted humans. Students of every known species hurried through the polished corridors, their appendages clattering, scraping, or squelching against the metal floors. It was the height of mid-cycle rush, with countless voices overlapping into a chaotic symphony as students hurried between lectures and labs. Alex Hayes leaned back in his seat within one of the many study halls, stretching his long, muscular frame beneath a shared lab table. His human physiology stood out even when he tried to blend in dense bones, layered muscles, and a metabolism finely tuned for a high-gravity, oxygen-rich environment. Despite the odd stares from his classmates, he was determined to make the most of his exchange year among the stars. As he pushed himself upright, a sharp, crackling pop echoed through the quiet of the study hall, bouncing off the metallic walls like the snapping of dry branches. Head swiveled, sensory nodes pulsed, and the various eye clusters of his classmates locked onto him with sudden, laser-like focus. The sound had cut through the ambient drone of conversation like a plasma blade through butter. Across the table, Ilther, a gelatinous TR Karth with a shimmering, translucent body and hundreds of tiny, quivering tendrils, wobbled in alarm. Its form rippled violently, a physical manifestation of shock, and it emitted a low, thrumming vibration that translated roughly to fear. Human haze. Are you fracturing? Ilther's fluid-filled body shifted hues from calming blue to a distressed shade of green, its tendrils stiffening in a way Alex had learned signaled deep concern. Alex blinked, momentarily caught off guard by the sudden attention. His brain caught up a second later, and a sheepish grin spread across his face. He raised his hands in a placating gesture, shaking his head. "Oh, nah, that's just my knees," he said, his tone light and dismissive. "They crack sometimes when I stand up. No big deal." Ilther's tendrils retracted slightly, but the alien's form continued to ripple with unease. A nearby Kroktar, a towering insectoid student with chitinous armor and 6 multi-jointed limbs, leaned closer, its sharp mandibles clicking in a rapid, staccato rhythm. Its antennae twitched in apparent confusion. "Cracking. Are your bones breaking?" the Kroktar asked, its voice a series of clicks and hisses that the universal translator smoothed into a synthetic, monotone approximation of speech. Alex stifled a laugh, aware that his amusement might only deepen their misunderstanding. He ran a hand through his short, dark hair, trying to find a simple way to explain. No, it's not like that," he replied, suppressing the urge to chuckle. "It's just gas bubbles in the joints, or sometimes cartilage moving around. Perfectly normal for humans." His casual tone seemed to confuse the aliens even more. A multi-eyed Dralian student nearby, its long, segmented neck craning to get a better view, emitted a soft, low-frequency hum of unease. Several other species began murmuring in their native tongues, the translation devices struggling to keep up with the overlapping waves of concern. "But is this not a sign of structural failure?" Ilther pressed, its tendrils vibrating in rapid, nervous pulses. "You are still in your prime reproductive cycle, are you not? Your skeletal frame should not be compromising." Alex sighed, realizing he'd stumbled into one of those classic human-alien misunderstandings that peppered his daily life at the university. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the cool, metallic table, and tried again. "No, it's not a sign of weakness or damage. Human joints just make noise sometimes. We have this fluid called synovial fluid in our joints, and sometimes gas builds up and gets released when we move. It's totally normal." The explanation did little to calm his classmates. If anything, it only seemed to deepen their concern. The Kroktar retracted its forelimbs, chitin clicking nervously as it glanced at the other students. Ilther's color shifted again, this time to a worried shade of yellow, its tendrils vibrating with the alien equivalent of anxious fidgeting. "Your species tolerates this structural instability," the TR Karth managed, its tone dripping with disbelief. "Why would you allow such a flaw to persist?" Alex chuckled, leaning back in his chair and stretching his arms until his shoulders emitted a satisfying series of pops. The sharp sound sent another wave of shudders through his audience, their varied body structures reacting in unison like a startled school of fish. "It's just part of being human," he said with a grin. "We might not have the hardest exoskeletons or the strongest carapaces, but we're flexible, adaptive, and tough in our own way. Cracking joints are just part of the package." The aliens around him exchanged glances, or the closest approximation thereof, clearly struggling to process this strange, self-inflicted vulnerability. Alex couldn't help but find the whole situation amusing. Here he was, surrounded by some of the galaxy's brightest minds, and they were baffled by something as simple as a noisy joint. He could already imagine the kinds of exaggerated rumors this would spawn. Maybe by the end of the week, the whole university would believe humans were held together by a fragile web of constantly shifting bones, their skeletons a ticking time bomb of potential fractures. Alex leaned back, folding his hands behind his head, and watched with quiet amusement as his classmates slowly returned to their studies, their collective discomfort still palpable. If nothing else, his little joint-popping display had made the day a lot more interesting. Word of Alex's unsettling joint cracking had spread like wildfire through Galaxis Prime University. It started with whispers in the study halls and murmurs in the cafeterias, but soon it had become a full-fledged topic of debate in the common rooms and lecture theaters. Aliens of all shapes, sizes, and chemical compositions were speculating about the structural integrity of human skeletons, and even the faculty had taken notice. The Tiarkarth, Ilther, had become something of a minor celebrity in its pod for having witnessed the incident firsthand. Its tendrils quivered with excitement as it relayed the details to its pod mates, who clustered around it in the damp, fluid-filled caverns they used for rest and socialization. "Human haze insists that this cracking is a natural occurrence," Ilther said, its form rippling in the Tiarkarth equivalent of intense focus. "He claims it causes no harm, yet the sounds are unmistakably those of structural stress." The gathered Tiarkarth emitted a collective ripple of disbelief, their translucent bodies shifting from a calming azure to a nervous shade of pale green. "Perhaps the human is attempting to hide a weakness," one podmate suggested, its tendrils curling tightly against its body. "Their species is known for a peculiar form of bravado." Another podmate, its form slightly more opaque and tinged with streaks of bioluminescent purple, vibrated with a thoughtful hum. "But their history is full of strange adaptations. Perhaps this cracking is some sort of evolutionary advantage." Ilther considered this, its tendrils undulating in slow, contemplative waves. "It is possible. I must observe further." Meanwhile, Alex had started to notice the extra attention. His fellow students seemed to hover a little closer than usual, their sensory appendages constantly directed his way, as if expecting him to crumble into a pile of bone fragments at any moment. He caught snippets of whispered conversations as he passed through the halls, the universal translators struggling to keep up with the flurry of concerned tones and speculative chatter. One afternoon, as he was grabbing lunch in the sprawling, multi-tiered dining hall, a group of Kroktar sidled up to his table. Their hard, chitinous bodies clicked and clattered with each step, and their multifaceted eyes reflected the bright overhead lights in a dizzying array of colors. One of them, a particularly large individual with a complex pattern etched into its shell, leaned in, its mandibles parting in a cautious greeting. "Human haze," it rasped, its voice like stones grinding together. "We have heard of your condition." Alex paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. He glanced around the table, noting the curious glances from nearby students. He forced a casual smile, setting his fork down and leaning back in his seat. "Oh, you mean my knees," he said, rolling his shoulders for emphasis. The resulting series of pops and cracks caused a few nearby aliens to recoil visibly, their various appendages twitching in a universal display of alarm. "Yeah, it's nothing to worry about. Just a human thing." The Kroktar hesitated, its antennae twitching in what Alex had learned to interpret as uncertainty. "But your structure remains intact," it pressed, its forelimbs tapping nervously against the metal tabletop. Alex stifled a laugh. The idea that his alien classmates were genuinely concerned for his physical integrity was both touching and a little absurd. "Yeah, I'm fine," he assured them. It's just gases and fluid moving around in the joints. Totally normal. A few tables away, Ilther observed the interaction, its tendrils vibrating with renewed curiosity. It made a mental note to investigate further, perhaps even consult the university's medical database for more information on human physiology. Later that week, Alex found himself cornered in one of the university's extensive botanical gardens by a trio of Dralian students. Their long, serpentine bodies coiled around the low branches of an alien tree, their scales glistening with the moisture from the humid atmosphere. Their many eyes blinked in a slow, disconcerting rhythm as they regarded him. Human haze. One of them began, its voice a series of low, guttural tones that the translator struggled to parse. We have reviewed the anatomy of your species. Your skeletal structure is intriguing. Alex raised an eyebrow, leaning back against the trunk of a tree that oozed a faintly sweet, sticky resin. Oh yeah, what's so interesting about it? The Dralian's tongue flicked out, tasting the air as it considered its response. Your bones are hollow yet dense, supported by a matrix of collagen and calcium. This design sacrifices sheer strength for flexibility and endurance, a fascinating compromise. Alex chuckled, crossing his arms. Yeah, I guess you could say that. We're not the toughest species out there, but we've got a knack for bouncing back. The Dralians exchanged glances, their scales rustling softly as they considered this. Yet you tolerate these cracks and pops without concern? Alex shrugged, rolling his neck until a satisfying series of cracks echoed through the humid air, causing the Dralians to flinch back instinctively. Like I said, it's just part of the package. Humans are all about adaptation. The conversation lingered in Alex's mind as he returned to his dorm later that night. He stretched his arms above his head, feeling the satisfying pull of his muscles as his joints cracked in protest. He couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of his classmates' ongoing fascination with something as mundane as a noisy joint. He wondered how long it would take before the university's medical department started sending him requests for scans and studies, eager to document the peculiarities of human biology. After all, in a galaxy full of beings with exoskeletons, fluid-based circulatory systems, and amorphous bodies, the idea of a bipedal, air-breathing mammal with a crack-prone skeleton must seem downright bizarre. As he settled into his bunk, the metallic frame creaking beneath his weight, Alex smiled to himself. Maybe being a walking, cracking curiosity wasn't such a bad thing after all. Alex had nearly forgotten about the whole joint-cracking incident. It had become just another oddity in his daily life at Galaxis Prime University, a place where he was surrounded by beings with entirely different biologies and cultural norms. But as it turned out, the human tendency for noisy joints would soon become more than just a harmless curiosity. It happened during a zero-gravity combat training session in the university's sprawling physical education complex, a vast, spherical chamber filled with floating obstacles and holographic training drones. The facility was designed to prepare students for the unpredictable physics of space combat, where up and down were relative concepts and every movement required careful planning. Alex had been paired with a Gornith, a massive, quadrupedal creature covered in overlapping plates of natural armor. It towered over him, each of its 4 legs ending in heavy, crushing talons designed for ripping through the dense foliage of its homeworld. Despite its bulk, the Gornith moved with surprising agility, twisting its thick, muscular body through the weightless arena with practiced ease. Alex, by contrast, was all lean muscle and quick reflexes, his body honed by years of Earth's high-gravity environment. He pushed off one of the chamber's floating platforms, using his momentum to launch himself into a tight spiral around the Gornith's flank. His goal was to tag one of the creature's armored pressure points, a move that would simulate a disabling strike in real combat. He twisted his body sharply, extending his right leg to brace against a nearby metal pillar, but the instant his knee straightened, a loud, echoing pop filled the chamber. Alex's eyes widened as a sharp, stabbing pain shot up his leg, and his momentum carried him into a clumsy, spiraling tumble. He barely managed to twist his torso, avoiding a head-on collision with one of the floating drones, but his outstretched arm clipped a metal support strut, sending him spinning uncontrollably. Alert! Human haze has sustained structural damage. The arena's automated monitoring system blared, its synthesized voice tinged with simulated concern. The Gornith, its heavy frame drifting nearby, paused in its advance, its reflective eyes narrowing in confusion. It let out a deep, resonant growl that vibrated through the chamber's metal walls, its talons clenching reflexively. Alex tried to right himself, gritting his teeth as the pain in his knee flared again. He could already feel the joint swelling, his body's rapid response to the sudden trauma. He managed to grab hold of a passing handhold, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he pulled himself upright. Before he could assess the damage, a cluster of concerned students floated over, their various appendages and sensory clusters directed at him in clear alarm. Ilther, who had been observing the match from a nearby platform, surged forward, its translucent body vibrating with what Alex recognized as panic. "Human haze. Your structure is failing," it cried, its tendrils flaring outward in a frantic display. "You have sustained critical damage." Alex forced a strained smile, still clutching the handhold as his knee throbbed with each heartbeat. It's fine," he managed, his voice tight with pain. "Just a ligament thing. Nothing to worry about." Ilther emitted a low, warbling tone that resonated through the chamber, causing a few other nearby students to recoil in instinctive alarm. Its form shifted from a bright, anxious yellow to a deep, distressed green, its tendrils quivering violently. "Immediate medical intervention required," the arena's AI chimed in, its holographic avatar flickering into existence nearby. "Human musculoskeletal systems are known to be structurally complex, yet prone to catastrophic failure. Transport to medical bay recommended." Before Alex could protest, he felt a dozen alien limbs, tendrils, and appendages latch onto him, guiding his floating form toward the chamber's exit. He had a brief, surreal moment of being carried like a wounded soldier, his alien classmates forming a protective bubble around him as they drifted toward the exit hatch. The journey to the medical bay felt both painfully slow and disorientingly fast. Alex's mind raced as he tried to assess the damage. He could feel the familiar, sickening looseness in his knee, the telltale sign of a ligament tear. He cursed under his breath, already dreading the long, painful recovery process. As the medbay's automated door slid open, a team of medical drones descended on him, their various limbs and scanners whirring to life. He was gently lowered onto a hovering examination table, his leg extended into a stasis field that pulsed with cool, numbing energy. "Assessing damage," one of the drones intoned, its voice a calm, mechanical monotone. A thin beam of blue light swept over his knee, the diagnostic scanner flashing as it processed the incoming data. "Partial anterior cruciate ligament tear detected," the drone reported, initiating tissue stabilization and regenerative therapy. Ilther hovered nearby, its tendrils still vibrating with anxiety as the medical drones swarmed around Alex, injecting his leg with a cocktail of painkillers and regenerative compounds. Its form shifted to a deep, worried blue, the color pulsing in slow, steady waves. "Human haze, you continue to amaze and terrify me," Ilther murmured, its voice trembling. "You risk catastrophic structural failure, yet you persist in these violent, physical activities. Why?" Alex managed a weak chuckle as the numbing agents took hold, the pain in his knee fading to a distant throb. "Because that's what we do, Ilther," he replied, his eyes drifting closed as the exhaustion hit him. "Humans, we push our limits, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts." As the medbay's lights dimmed and the soft hum of medical machinery filled his ears, Alex let himself drift into a fitful, pain-addled sleep. His last conscious thought a mixture of frustration and grim amusement. He had come to the farthest reaches of the galaxy to expand his mind, but it seemed his body had other plans. Alex awoke to the gentle hum of the medical bay's environmental systems, the sterile scent of disinfectants tingling in his nose. He blinked against the harsh, clinical lights, momentarily disoriented. His knee, encased in a shimmering stasis field, felt strangely numb, the pain reduced to a distant, muted throb. As his senses gradually returned, he became aware of the low, rhythmic vibrations of Ilther, who hovered beside his recovery pod. The Tr. Kartha's translucent body pulsed with a soft, calming blue, its tendrils gently brushing against the glass barrier that separated them. "Human haze," it began, its voice quivering slightly. "You have regained consciousness. This is reassuring." Alex managed a weak smile, his throat dry from the hours spent under sedation. "Hey, Ulthar," he croaked, his voice rough. "Guess I gave you a bit of a scare, huh?" The alien's tendrils vibrated in a rapid, staccato pattern, a clear sign of lingering distress. "You experienced a critical structural failure," it replied, its form flickering with anxious hues. "Your lower appendage sustained significant damage. The medical drones have indicated a partial tearing of one of your ligament structures." Alex grimaced, flexing his fingers as he processed the news. He had suspected as much. An ACL tear was no joke, even with advanced medical technology. He'd be off his feet for weeks, maybe longer, depending on how his body responded to the regenerative treatments. "Yeah, that tracks," he muttered, glancing down at his immobilized leg. "Figures I'd end up blowing a knee trying to show off in zero-G." Ilthar's tendrils curled in a gesture Alex had come to recognize as deep concern. "I still do not understand," it said, its tone tinged with frustration. "Why would you risk such harm? Your species is fragile, your bones prone to fracturing, your tissues susceptible to tearing. Why push your structure beyond its limits?" Alex chuckled, his voice still rough, but gaining strength. "Because that's just what we do, Ulthar," he replied, meeting the alien's many eyes. "Humans, we're built to push limits, to take risks, to keep going even when it hurts. It's how we survive. It's how we thrive." Ilthar's form flickered with uncertain hues, its tendrils twisting in slow, contemplative patterns. "But this suffering," it murmured, its voice tinged with disbelief. "Why not avoid it? Why not seek a safer, less painful existence?" Alex leaned back, staring at the smooth, white ceiling of the med bay as he considered the question. It was a fair point. Humans were, by most measures, a fragile species. Soft, fleshy, and prone to a wide range of injuries and ailments. And yet, despite their apparent vulnerabilities, they had spread across the galaxy, carving out a place for themselves among beings far stronger and more resilient. "Because pain isn't just a weakness," Alex said quietly, his eyes unfocused as he drifted in the haze of the painkillers still flowing through his veins. "It's a signal. It tells us when we're alive, when we're growing, when we're pushing ourselves to the limit. It's part of being human." Ilthar fell silent, its tendrils curling and uncurling in slow, thoughtful motions. For a long moment, the only sounds in the med bay were the gentle hum of the medical equipment and the soft, rhythmic beeping of Alex's vital monitors. Finally, Ilthar spoke again, its tone softer, more subdued. "Perhaps this is why your species has proven so resilient," it admitted, its form settling into a deep, respectful blue. "You endure what others might flee. You embrace your flaws, your imperfections, and press forward regardless." Alex smiled, his eyes growing heavy as the fatigue from his injury and the lingering effects of the sedatives pulled him back toward unconsciousness. "Yeah," he murmured, his voice barely more than a whisper. "We're a stubborn bunch. It's what makes us human." As he drifted back into a deep, dreamless sleep, Ilthar remained at his side, its tendrils gently tracing slow, rhythmic patterns against the glass, a silent gesture of newfound respect for its fragile, yet remarkably resilient friend.